Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I need to go back to 10th grade to explain how everything started. That year was when my life really fell apart. Depression hit me like a truck, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I started using cigarettes to cope at first. Then it escalated to benzos like Xanax. Before I knew it, I was taking opioids like OxyContin and Percocet just to get through the day. I was trying to numb everything I felt. My grades tanked and I stopped caring about anything. My parents noticed something was wrong, but I kept lying to them about it. By the end of 10th grade, I knew I was in deep trouble. When senior year was coming up, I decided I needed a fresh start. I transferred to a smaller school across town where I actually knew most of the students from middle school. It seemed like the perfect chance to leave all the bad stuff behind and reconnect with old friends. I thought maybe being around people who knew me before everything went wrong would help. The first few weeks were actually pretty good. I reconnected with some friends I hadn't seen in years, made some new friends too, but I was still smoking weed pretty heavily. So were most of my friends at this school. We would smoke before class sometimes and definitely during lunch breaks. We weren't careful about hiding it. I kept my harder drug use hidden though. Nobody at the new school knew about the pills I was still taking. For the first few months of senior year, things seemed manageable. I was keeping my head down in class and trying to stay out of trouble. My grades weren't great, but they weren't terrible either. Then one day in November, everything changed. The principal called me into his office during third period. The vice principal was there too. They both looked serious. The principal told me they had received an anonymous letter about me. He said someone claimed to be concerned about my well-being. The letter apparently said I was coming to school high every day. It also said I was smoking weed with my friends during breaks and lunch. Some of it was true, but they had no proof. The principal asked me directly if I was using drugs. I denied everything. He seemed frustrated about the whole situation. He told me he didn't like dealing with anonymous accusations because there was nothing concrete to act on. The vice principal said they would be keeping an eye on me but couldn't punish me without evidence. I left that office thinking I had dodged a bullet. Maybe whoever sent that letter would just give up. 2 weeks later, more letters arrived. These ones were so much worse than the first. The principal called me back to his office. This time, my parents were there too. My stomach dropped when I walked in and saw them sitting there. The principal explained that multiple new letters had been sent to the school. These letters claimed I was selling pills to younger students. They said I was pressuring freshmen and sophomores into taking OxyContin and Xanax. The letter stated that 12 parents had gotten together and were threatening to pull their kids from school if I wasn't expelled. My mom started crying right there in the office. My dad just stared at me with this look of complete disappointment. I tried to explain that I wasn't selling anything to anyone. I told them I wasn't pressuring anyone into taking drugs. My parents didn't know what to believe. The principal said he still had no actual evidence, but the situation was getting out of hand. He told my parents he would need to investigate further. When we got home, my parents grilled me for hours. My dad was yelling about how I was throwing my life away. My mom kept asking where they went wrong as parents. I kept trying to tell them the letters were lies, but they didn't fully believe me. The next few weeks were absolute hell. Word spread around school about the letters. Kids started whispering when I walked by in the hallways. Some of my teachers started treating me differently. They would watch me more closely in class. A few teachers who had been friendly before started acting cold toward me. My friends from middle school started distancing themselves. People I had known for years suddenly didn't want to be seen with me. Only 2 or 3 real friends stuck by me through it all. The isolation was crushing. I started having panic attacks before school. My depression got worse than it had ever been. I relapsed hard on the pills I had been trying to cut back on. Some days I would take 3 or 4 Xanax just to make it through classes. My grades plummeted. I went from C's and B's to barely passing most of my classes. I stopped doing homework entirely. Showing up to school at all felt like an impossible task some days. The school investigated for about a month. They interviewed students who were supposedly involved. Nobody confirmed any of the accusations because none of it was true. Eventually, the principal told my parents there wasn't enough evidence to expel me. But the damage was already done. My reputation was destroyed. My mental health was in shambles. My relationship with my parents was strained. Somehow I managed to scrape by and pass enough classes to graduate. But senior year was supposed to be fun and memorable. Instead, it was the worst year of my life. For a long time after graduation, I had no idea who sent those letters. It ate away at me not knowing who had tried to destroy my life. Then about a year after I graduated, some information came out about other incidents. There was this woman who lived in our town. Her daughter went to the same school. The daughter was in 8th or 9th grade at the time people started connecting dots about this woman. She had sent anonymous letters to other students before. One kid got a letter telling him everyone at school hated him and he should transfer. Another girl got letters saying she was ugly and nobody wanted her around. In one case, someone figured out it was this woman because she had used a WhatsApp number to send threatening messages. They traced the number back to her. Other anonymous letters people received had the same writing style and similar phrasing. It became pretty clear she had been behind multiple incidents. She was completely psychotic about controlling everything around her daughter. She would decide which kids her daughter could be friends with. If she didn't like a kid or their parents, she would prevent her daughter from hanging out with them. She was known in the community for being a total control freak. Her husband was just as bad. They both had this holier-than-thou attitude about everything. When I heard about all this, I became pretty convinced she was the one who sent those letters about me. Maybe she thought I was a bad influence because of the weed smoking. Maybe she just didn't like me for no reason. I would never know for sure because I could never prove it. I tried to move on with my life after high school, got a job, started taking community college classes, slowly got my drug use under control. I tried to put the whole nightmare behind me, but I never forgot what those letters did to me. Then about 2 years after graduation, I was scrolling through local news online. I saw a headline that made me stop and read immediately. The woman and her husband ran a non-profit organization in our province. They had started it about 5 years earlier. It was supposed to help underprivileged kids get access to education programs. According to the article, the provincial government was suing them for embezzlement. The accusations were massive. They allegedly stole $4 million over a 3-year period. They had set up several shell corporations to funnel money through. They created some kind of tutoring program and sold it to their own non-profit through a separate company they secretly owned. They were basically paying themselves with charity money. There were other schemes too involving fake contractors and inflated expenses. The whole thing was incredibly elaborate. Prosecutors were saying they had been stealing donations and government grants meant for helping kids. Instead, they were buying luxury cars and taking expensive vacations. They had a second home they purchased with the stolen money. The article said if convicted, they could face up to 15 years in prison each. Reading that felt like something clicked into place in my brain. This woman had tried to ruin my life when I was 17 years old. She sent those letters knowing they were complete lies. She didn't care that I wasn't actually selling drugs to younger kids. She didn't care that her accusations would follow me for years. She just wanted to hurt me for reasons I still don't fully understand. Maybe she thought she was protecting her daughter. Maybe she was just a cruel person who enjoyed making others suffer. Either way, she had made my senior year a living hell. She contributed to my relapse. She damaged my relationships with my parents. She destroyed friendships I had since childhood. And now here she was, caught stealing $4 million from a charity meant to help children. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had accused me of being a drug dealer who hurt kids. Meanwhile, she was literally stealing from children who needed help. Part of me felt bad for her daughter. The girl was actually pretty cool when we were younger before her mom isolated her from everyone. That kid didn't deserve to have parents who were criminals. She didn't deserve to have her name dragged through the news because of what they did. But her mom, I felt absolutely nothing for her except satisfaction. She had tried to destroy me when I was at my lowest point. I was just a depressed kid trying to survive high school. I never hurt anyone at that school. I kept to myself and my small group of friends. Sure, I was smoking weed and taking pills, but I wasn't pushing that on anyone else. I was just trying to cope with my own problems. She couldn't let me do even that. She had to meddle and create chaos where there didn't need to be any. Now karma had finally caught up with her. $4 million in embezzlement charges, multiple felonies, possible prison time. Her reputation completely destroyed. Her non-profit shut down. Her name permanently associated with fraud and theft. I was 20 years old when I started dating her. We had been together for about a year and a half, and everything felt perfect. Her mother owned this successful business selling children's fashion clothes. She had built up quite an operation with a storage facility, a retail store, and 2 delivery trucks. The company was making good money. One day, her mother approached me with a job offer. She needed someone to drive one of her trucks, a 3.5-ton vehicle. I wasn't happy at my current job, so I accepted. It seemed like a win-win situation for everyone involved. The work was alright even though I put in a huge amount of overtime hours. Her mother took the time to train me properly. She showed me how every part of the company worked. She trusted me with sensitive information about the business operations, things that regular employees would never learn. I spent a year working there, and by the end I knew every single detail about how things ran, because she treated me like part of the family. Then everything changed. I discovered that my girlfriend had cheated on me with her ex-boyfriend. I broke up with her immediately. The situation was messy and painful. I called her mother right after it happened and explained everything. I told her I wanted to keep business separate from personal issues. I assured her I would continue showing up for work even though I had no interest in seeing her daughter ever again. Her mother said she understood and that everything would be fine. But of course she took her daughter's side. I could feel her anger toward me because of the breakup. I kept going to work and acted professionally. I put all the drama aside and focused on doing my job. But soon after she started singling me out. She began searching for mistakes so she would have reasons to discipline me. This pattern continued for months. I realized she was just waiting for a good excuse to fire me, but I refused to give her one easily. She grew frustrated because she couldn't find any major errors. The minor issues she pointed out were often completely made up and weren't serious enough to justify terminating me. So she came up with a different plan. The truck had this power generator that provided electricity for lights and equipment like laptops and printers. It worked 2 different ways. It ran on fuel when we were driving and plugged into a cable when we were parked at the storage facility, but the setup wasn't professionally installed. They had just hired some electrician who made an error in the wiring. We had to flip a switch every time we used the cable connection or the generator would burn out. I always remembered this because I knew what would happen if I forgot. One day while I was loading the truck, she convinced one of my coworkers to flip the switch back without my knowledge. After a few minutes, the lights went out and I immediately noticed something was wrong. The generator had burned out, but I knew for certain I hadn't forgotten about the switch. I had been loading the truck for over an hour and the generator only takes about 5 minutes to burn out when the switch is in the wrong position. It couldn't have been me. She refused to listen to my explanation. She started yelling at me and fired me right there on the spot. Then she told me that she planned to pay for the repairs by taking the money out of my final salary. I shouldn't expect to receive any payment from her. I didn't take that well. I told her she really didn't want to go down this path with me. She refused to listen. I spent a few days cooling off, but I wanted to give her one final chance to make things right. I called her and explained that even though I knew what had happened and that she had set me up, if she just paid me what I was owed, then I would consider everything finished. We would never have to see each other again. She told me to get lost. I came up with my own plan. I started with something I knew was a major violation. The retail store didn't have a bathroom, which was illegal in my country. The shop assistants had made an arrangement with a restaurant across the street whenever they needed to use the facilities. I reported this to the authorities. The very next day, they shut down the shop because of the violation. They told her that she couldn't reopen until she had a proper bathroom installed. She called me right away and asked if I had anything to do with what happened. I laughed and reminded her that I had warned her not to go this way with me. Then I hung up. I wasn't finished though, and I knew that both me and the other truck driver had accumulated massive amounts of overtime. Our tachograph cards recorded everything: how many hours we drove, how fast we went, when we stopped. We were way over the legal limits. I called the authorities again and told them everything. They showed up and checked all the records. The company received a brutal fine. She started sending me angry text messages all day long. I replied back telling her I wasn't done yet. A few hours of silence passed. Then my phone rang and it was her calling. She asked if we could talk things over. She even mentioned that she had sent my final paycheck. I shut her down immediately. I told her it was too late for that. Then I contacted the fire department. I reported that the electrical wiring in the walls of the store was outdated and causing short circuits on a daily basis. I also told them that they only had 2 fire extinguishers for the entire place, when they should have had somewhere between 12 and 15. On that very same day, they were forced to close the storage facility. She lost the last location where she could make any money for months until they got everything up to code and replaced all the old wiring. The renovation costs would be enormous. Because of all the fines she had received from the different authorities, she couldn't afford these renovations. A few months later, she filed for bankruptcy. I know this because my ex-girlfriend called me and said she hoped I was happy because I had made her family go bankrupt. She called me names. I never received my final paycheck, but at that point, I didn't even care anymore. I was satisfied with how everything turned out. After a few more months passed, the tax department took almost everything from her. The store, all the merchandise, the storage facility, the trucks, everything. She had received so many fines from different authorities that she couldn't pay them. After everything was taken, she sold her house and moved to a smaller apartment. She never owned a business again. From what I know, she works in a store as a clerk now. Things aren't looking good for her. My ex-girlfriend married the next guy she dated, and now they have 4 children together. After the second child, she really let herself go. At least they're still together, so maybe she learned a lesson and didn't cheat on him. I hope so. I had a long relationship after her, and my son was born. But his mother turned out to be lazy and only wanted money from me. So after 5 years, we separated. I met the love of my life after that, and we've been happy together for almost 9 years now. She had also gotten out of a terrible relationship before we met, one that involved abuse and domestic violence. So she truly appreciates me, and I feel the same way about her. I love her more than anything. I became a mother 5 months ago, and it changed everything about my life. The sleepless nights, the constant feeding schedule, the worrying about every little sound my baby made. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. About 3 months after giving birth, I started experiencing these weird, dizzy spells. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion. New moms are supposed to be tired, right? But these episodes were different. One moment I'd be fine, and the next the whole room would start spinning. I'd have to sit down immediately or risk falling over. When the 3rd time it happened, my husband insisted I see a doctor. That's when I got the diagnosis: inner ear disturbance. The doctor explained that something in my inner ear wasn't working properly, which was throwing off my balance and causing these sudden episodes of vertigo. He gave me medication and sent me to vestibular rehabilitation therapy. The therapy sessions were helpful, but progress was slow. I had to do these exercises where I'd move my head in specific ways while focusing on objects. It was supposed to retrain my brain to compensate for the inner ear issues. Some days were better than others. Some days I felt almost normal. Other days, I couldn't even get out of bed without feeling like I was on a boat in rough seas. My husband was incredible through all of this. He took on extra responsibilities with the baby, made sure I took my medication on time, and drove me to all my appointments. We were adjusting to this new reality together. That morning started out beautifully. The sun was shining and there was a nice breeze. My husband suggested we go to the local store to pick up some groceries. I thought it would be good for me to get out of the house. Plus, we had recently bought a stroller for our son and were still getting used to using it. The weather was perfect for taking him out. My husband loaded the stroller into the car and we headed to the store. When we got there, he grabbed a shopping cart while I pushed the stroller. Our baby was awake and looking around at everything with those wide, curious eyes that babies have. We made our way through the produce section first. I was feeling pretty good. No dizziness, no problems. I was actually starting to feel optimistic that maybe the therapy was really working. We moved on to the cereal aisle, then the dairy section. My husband was loading things into the cart while I kept an eye on the baby and occasionally grabbed items from lower shelves. Then it hit me without warning. A sharp stabbing pain shot through my stomach. The entire world tilted sideways. I tried to grab onto the stroller for support, but my legs just gave out completely. I went down hard, hitting the cold floor. My body started shaking uncontrollably. The pain was so intense I couldn't even call out for help. I could hear voices around me. People were gathering. Someone asked if I was okay. Another person said they'd call for help. Everything sounded distant and muffled, like I was underwater. These episodes usually lasted a few minutes. I just needed time to recover. But then I heard it, a piercing scream that cut through the fog in my brain. I forced my eyes open and tried to focus. That's when I saw her, a blonde woman with short hair. She was reaching into the stroller. She was grabbing my baby. My son was crying. She was lifting him out and turning toward the exit. Every instinct in my body kicked in. I screamed about my baby. I kept screaming it over and over. People were staring at me like I was crazy. They probably thought I was having some kind of mental breakdown. But my husband understood immediately. He looked at the stroller, saw it was empty. His face went pale. I pointed toward the exit where the woman was walking quickly, with my baby in her arms. My husband took off running. I tried to get up, but my body wasn't cooperating yet. Other customers were helping me, trying to understand what was happening. What I found out later was that my husband caught up to her right at the entrance gates. He was yelling at the top of his lungs for the security guard to stop her. He was shouting that she was kidnapping his son. The security guard moved to block her path, but she wasn't going quietly. She started hitting him, slapping his face, scratching at his arms. She was like a wild animal trying to escape. My husband had to physically wrestle our baby away from her. She was gripping him so tight that my husband had to pry her fingers off one by one. Our son was screaming the whole time. By then, a couple of customers who had been helping me were walking me toward the commotion at the front. My legs were still shaky, but adrenaline was pushing me forward. The moment I saw my baby safe in my husband's arms, something snapped inside me. All the fear, all the terror, all the helplessness I had felt lying on that floor. It all turned into pure rage. The woman was sitting on the ground. The security guard was holding her there while someone else called the police. I didn't think. I just acted. I walked up to her and kneed her right in the face with everything I had. I felt her nose crunch under my knee. People immediately grabbed me and pulled me back. I was still trying to get to her. I wanted to hurt her more. How dare she try to take my baby? How dare she? The police arrived within minutes. They arrested her right there. Attempted kidnapping. They handcuffed her and took her away while her face was bleeding. I held my baby so tight. He was still crying, but he was safe. My husband wrapped his arms around both of us. We just stood there in the middle of the store entrance, holding each other and crying. The police took our statements. The store manager gave us the security footage. Multiple witnesses came forward to confirm what happened. It took months for the case to go through court, but she was convicted. 10 years in prison. It should have been more. But here's the thing about prison. Inmates have their own justice system. Word got around about why she was in there. Attempted baby kidnapper. That doesn't go over well behind bars. She ended up in the hospital. The inmates took care of her. Too many broken bones to count according to the news report. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.